regarding mental health, we are probably in the worst state ever.
Too much data can actually also be a negative thing, but nevertheless, we need to be really, really cautious about who is using it. People need to know that it is protected.
We have a unique opportunity that all our parents did not have, so I would really urge people to take it. Hi and welcome to another episode of the Matternity Podcast. Today in a remote setup because I have two amazing guests joining me online. We're going to go into that introduction in a second. Our topic for today is a matter of algorithmic empathy. We're going to deep dive into digital health and especially data tracking and what we can do with this data. My two guests are Marie-Luise Huber, who's leading head of nutrition at Hello Insights, the metabolic health platform for women, utilizing continuous glucose and lifestyle monitoring to unlock behavioral change. My second guest is Karl Edlbauer, who has an amazing track record as Hockeyfy co-founder and CMO, where in just under 8 years, he scaled Hockeyfy into a sustainable company with nearly 100 employees and had a successful exit in 2024 when he got acquired by Karriere.at. Now he's building a very promising new startup in the digital healthcare with his new company, 100 Health. Hi, guys. So funny story for our listeners, maybe. We just recorded a bit of the intro and realized I didn't put record on. So if this feels awkward, it's my fault. But maybe we can have another introduction and we're going to start again with Marie.
Sure. I hope I'm not repeating myself, or if whatever. So my name is Marie-Luise Huber. I am a nutritional scientist, dietitian, and health coach, and head of nutrition at Hello Insight. I do live in the US and beautiful Boulder, but I'm originally from Austria. I studied nutritional sciences.
You managed to get rid of the accent, which is a very big achievement.
I appreciate that, but everyone around here still notices that I'm not native. But it's an asset. That's what I tell myself. And yeah, so I guess there will be some words where I'm still sounding a lot like an Austrian. Or if you talk to my husband, who is like from Styria, he sounds a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But anyway, so my background is my background is nutrition. I joined Hello Insight about 4.5 years ago. I did work for another digital health company focusing on weight loss before, called Noom. So I think it's not very popular in Austria, but pretty big in the US. And yeah, my passion is really helping women make sense of their body signals. So Hello Insight is actually really tapping into that, providing a platform that is connected to a continuous glucose monitor, and then based on the data, making recommendations, really focusing on the individual approach. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I was invited, kind of like being the human connection to making those recommendations. So yeah, I think that's me in a nutshell, probably.
Yeah, and I've seen that you just connected the Garmin API to Hello Insight, which I think is an amazing achievement for an Austrian company and a super great feature for your users.
Absolutely. And it's not only Garmin. I mean, Garmin is pretty big, but also we are connected with Oura, which for some women may be more interesting. So I always like to emphasize that too, that there is a API with Oura too.
How is Oura different or better in that sense for the female autonomy?
I would say Oura is a little better in the sense of really, I would say it's softer than Garmin. For everyone who uses Garmin, the recommendations they make, they're more bullish and kind of harder. If you don't move enough, Garmin feedback is pretty harsh. Whereas the Oura makes more again softer recommendations, more coach approaches. And Garmin probably is more performance driven, versus Oura is more focusing on sleep and stress, and also I would say it's amazing in detecting body temperature, and it does have a separate feature for women who are already pregnant, right? So like cycle tracking, I would say is better in that sense. But again, that's just my opinion.
Okay, amazing. And thank you very much. And maybe Karl, an introduction into your amazing career.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Kurt, for having us. I'm Karl. I'm previously a co-founder of Hockeyfy. With Hockeyfy, we started almost 8-9 years ago to reduce the friction in the recruiting space, and our ambition was to actually make job application really easy, reduce all the barriers in the job application process to help candidates find suitable jobs easier, and of course, on the other hand, help recruiters to find better candidates easier. And over the last couple of years, we developed the company into one of the biggest recruiting companies in the DACH market, so in Austria and Germany, with almost 8 million yearly users. And yeah, we had a really amazing journey. We built an amazing company based here in Vienna. And we have to say that actually this was my first job. So we started this straight after university. I did never have another full-time job after uni. But after so many years, actually, at one point, it was also time to open a new chapter. And that was the reason that last year we sold the company to one of our strategic investors, Karriere.at. And now we're actually really eager and enthusiastic to start again in a completely new space. Again, with my two co-founders, Daniel and Simon. We're starting in health tech. And yeah, I think here in this podcast, we can actually learn a lot from Marie. We are not the experts yet, but sometimes it also helps not to have too much experience in a space, to be more naive about a lot of things. And actually, I think we are still in the naive phase.
But maybe you could give a quick elevator pitch into what your vision is with your new company or what you're offering to your customers.
So the company is called 100, and I think the main North Star might be something like we want to be a communication layer, communication infrastructure to create a better relationship between patients and doctors. This is very broad, on purpose. So what we did actually, we started this year to get to know the market better and find out where are really the friction points that in a health system like Austria, Germany, for example, there's not better value provided to the users, although the system spends so much money. And then we got to know many friction points, and we believe that for many of those friction points, technology can be the solution. And then next step was actually we started in maybe May or so, that we started working on a preventive product. We actually had a lot of sparring sessions with Mario from Hello Inside, which is an old friend, about the product. And the idea was to use technology to provide better insights for, let's say, a more digitalized health checkup, Vorsorgeuntersuchung, how we call it in Austria, in combination with a precise plan. Because what we learned in the market, actually, you can do a Vorsorgeuntersuchung for free. I do the Vorsorgeuntersuchung every year. It's really amazing. It's a really great product to have it for free, to be honest. But the thing is, there's not enough resources then afterwards. So you have a Vorsorgeuntersuchung, but then you get the score, you get some data points, you get some numbers. But what you're going to do about it, if you're not somewhere completely far off the normal scale, everything is normal, pasture. So nothing needs to be changed. Nothing needs to be changed. And actually, within those ranges, there's so many nuances you can learn and you can change. And then we said, okay, let's build a better plan actually to follow after the analysis. We built that. We made a mini launch for that, which was really cool, and we got a lot of great feedback. But then at the same time, we learned that actually it's not so much about building the best product in health. it's more about aligning the stakeholders best. So I think there's so many products out there that are really better health products, but still they have not found mass adoption in the market because the stakeholders are not aligned properly. And so I think now we kind of had an additional, I would say, like a minor pivot. Now we're actually developing audio AI assistant with doctors and health centers who actually help them as a first step digitalize their relationship or their communication with patients over the phone. What are we doing? So for many health centers, doctors, etc., even more than 50% of the appointments of the of contact between patients and the doctor is over the phone. And many of those tasks are actually purely administrative, and they take away really valuable time from the doctor to spend with the patient. So now we try to develop a system that helps the doctors and the health systems or the health centers to take that burden away, to be more efficient and help them spend more time with patients, which should ideally result in better healthcare. So that was more than a small pitch, I would say. Now it's a book.
No, but that's very interesting. And if I remember correctly from one of our talks, Karl, you also enhance the drop off from one doctor to the other, right? Or you're planning on doing that? You said, right? Like I go from Vorsorgeuntersuchung to another doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's the friction in the communication between the doctors and the patients is still there, and I think we want to solve that. And our hypothesis that actually being able to do that through calling AI audio agents is the first step to actually solve that.
It's a very interesting topic, and I just had the case that I went to one doctor and did some laboratory testing, and then I went to another doctor. And there was no communication. Obviously, I think legally, maybe even in Austria, there can't be a communication in between the two of them. But then you lose so much time telling the same story to two different doctors. So I think, especially, and we have to say, Karl and me, as we're living in Austria, we're living in the land of the blessed when it comes to healthcare, looking globally. And also, as Karl said, maybe for our international listeners, Austria offers a yearly free checkup on basically all your metrics that are health relevant. And I think that's something the US probably can only dream about, with no or almost no public health care. But this brings me also into this conversation I want to have. And the first segment is individual data as a new medical era. We now have Whoop, for example. That's also, they just announced Whoop Advanced Labs, where you can basically upload laboratory results in a whatever cycle you prefer, and then the AI of Whoop analyzes the data points. We have Athletic as this AI-based startup that uses Apple Watch data to give you very deep insights. And I just went to my bookshelf and grabbed Christoph Kuklitz, Die Granulare Gesellschaft, which is actually from 2014. And back then he already talked about the change from a history of science and medicine, working with the average as our unit for getting the right decisions, getting the right medication, the right treatment. And it's not only medicine. The average was just the only unit we could really make work and to offer solutions. And now with everybody wearing a Whoop and the whole thing is just amplifying, we have Hello Insights and continuous glucose monitoring. So there's so much individual data that really brings us to the question, how can we scale this hyper-personalization in a sense that the system, healthcare in Austria, the Sozialversicherungen, etc., could use that data, which is so valuable. And this is my first question. Where do you think this will go, this hyper-personalization? Where are the opportunities and where are maybe the risks with it?
You want to go first, Karl?
I think you should go first, but I only wanted to add one thing to your question, Kurt, because I think it was not only about having like averages. I think in healthcare, another major problem was that actually the average was always male.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Karl. Yeah.
For all the research and everything, that the average was always male. That was the first major problem in all the studies. Why I'm saying it, because I talked about this topic with Mario a lot, so I know about it. And so I think the first step was actually to get away from this disaster, and now we make many steps to make it really individual, I would say.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you bring, and it's a perfect segue because that's one of the things I wanted to mention too is research and like the women's body only started like in the 70s, right? If you look into that, it's just recently, right? Which I think is just one big example of the data that we have and all the data sets is focused a lot on males. Another thing, when we talk about like hyper personalization, I have to say, like, even though I work for like a digital health company, I wear my Aura, I wear my Whoop, and like do track a lot of my data. Nevertheless, I think it's really, we all need to be cautious about the people who are using it. Like one example with that is, for example, I'm always very cautious if like a pregnant woman wants to test Hello Inside. And the reason for that is it's a very vulnerable stage in a woman's life. And even though we do have data about like the optimal glucose curve, nevertheless, a pregnancy journey for every woman looks different, right? And especially if it's like your first pregnancy, or it doesn't even matter if it's the first or the second or fourth, whatever, you only, as a mom, you only want the best for your kiddo. So if you receive like data, if you receive like scores that are out of the like normal range, you automatically get nervous, right? And you get anxious and you're like worried about yourself, you're worried about the kiddo. And so that's why I'm like, too much data can actually also be like a negative thing, right? It's similar to what Paracelsus said, like too much of one thing can also be poisonous. I don't want to say like data is poisonous. We all need it, right? But nevertheless, we need to be really, really cautious about who is using it. Or same goes for, we like whenever like someone approaches me and like I know they had a history of, for example, like eating disorder, glucose monitoring might not be or is not the first approach, I would say, if someone wants to fix their nutrition, because you receive scores, it feels black and white. And so that's why I even though I'm a big supporter of data and everything, we need to keep in mind the population who is using it, and not every data point is relevant for every population. The same goes for when I do like recommend or like consultations on behavior change, right? Like I really want to understand who the person in front of me is, because the recommendations there will differ from Karl to Kurt, right? Like what one thing that you love, Karl, Kurt may not even like it, so it's easy for him to change or not like give it up, right? So I think hyper personalization needs to be like used with caution, in the sense of like who is using it, and not every data point may be relevant for each person, and also not every day of the rest of your life. As I said, like I use a Whoop, I use a Oura, I track my glucose, I track all my workouts, but quote unquote, even I take breaks, right? Like I'm like, some of the recommendations don't even make sense for me in the stage I am at right now. And so I have this like I'm just cautious about all the recommendations. I provide feedbacks, but you should never forget the human and their lifestyle and personal history behind of that. So I think like that's my long story, or like long answer to that.
Yeah, I think I can add to that. I think the hyper personalization of medicine has a lot of advantages and improves the overall like value that is created at each person. But I think it's a lot about not only generating more individual data, but how to interpret it. So I would say, for example, in our preventive care product, we actually use technology to help kind of present and structure the data, but then there's still a doctor analyzing the data and making sure that this makes actually a lot of sense. So also for some of the lifestyle products, when you get recommendations, or with my Garmin, it's exactly the same. Or like you said, for example, Marie, sometimes the recommendations you get are complete bullshit. So actually, I think it's really important. The more the recommendations, the more, how do I say it? The more the bigger the impact they have. Like you said, when you're pregnant, you get recommendations, you completely freak out immediately, maybe. So you have to be really careful. There need to be a lot of guardrails. There need to be a lot of checks. Maybe even humans, doctors checking before actually those recommendations are presented. And I think my takeaway was that it's not only about generating more data, but it's about generating more insights that are validated, and then that they have good quality, actually.
Yeah, and also like relevant, right? I feel like relevant is a very, very important aspect when it comes to like personalization of data.
I think getting the human element in might be even more important now than it used to be when they all were taking the average, because usually the average wouldn't harm anybody. But as of now, like you have maybe, okay, my glucose monitor is showing me a random peak, and maybe then an AI analyzes it and gives me a wrong result or a recommendation. As we all know, there's still hallucination in LLM models. So this might as well happen. So I think the human element might be more important now than it actually was. But I think like maybe the trend moving from reactive sick care to proactive wealth care can really be probably amplified with the data we have. But I think the measurement and the looking over from humans will be very, very important. But what do you think from a societal level or a political level, how hyper-personalization and this individual tracking of medical data could have implications for society, politics, individuals?
That's a tough question, but I feel like on the one hand, unfortunately, a lot of those wearables are still pretty expensive, which means a lot of like people who are more wealthy have access to those data points. But nevertheless, I feel like it's also good because that means like a momentum is or like a movement is starting, right? Like even when I think about like the conversations I have, all my friends, all my family, they know about like glucose monitoring and like they should eat salad first and everything, even though not all of them have worn a data, right? So I feel like it's amazing no matter where you are as a conversation starter. And again, like the more people use it, it's also kind of like the more people want it, which hopefully will lower the price as well, right? So I feel like even though it may still be one aspect for quote unquote the more wealthy ones, unfortunately, also those who may have better health, right? When we look at the socioeconomic status, especially thinking about the US right here, those people who have money usually are better off health-wise. Not all of them, but still. It provides some knowledge there, right? But then again, like it's US political system. I don't want to get into that. But it starts a conversation, right? And the more people talk about a topic, especially for me, like also, I think I didn't mention it, like my background is also in public health, right? I have a master's in public health. So looking at like the broader perspective is really, really important. But it's always like, again, like you need this extra caution about like who is saying what and like when there's like health data out there and like health promotion, always take it with a grain of salt, right? Double check, make sure that it's like science backed and phased, and like also with LLM, you mentioned like there are hallucinations, right? So please, and then I think like that's where like the human component comes back in. Reach out to like a doctor, to a medical professional, to a dietitian, whoever you want to talk to make sure that the knowledge you have received through all of the data sets really applies to you as well. So I feel like it's great that we have those tools, and I'm again like big supporter, and I feel like it's a first step into making the population a little bit healthier by either testing the products themselves or having the conversations, for example, at a dinner table or whatever.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And I also think from a lens living here in Austria that actually all the technology, although it might be still expensive to some extent, gives us a unique opportunity, I would say, because actually our parents at the same age did not even have the chance to have all those data points, to have all those insights that we can gather right now. So actually, I think first of all, we have to see it as a unique chance. We have a chance to use all this data we have wisely to live better lives and live healthier. Because on the other hand, I would say that actually the healthcare system on a more on a bigger scale, the Austrian healthcare system, the European healthcare system, will not be the first mover from sick care to preventive medicine, actually, because the whole system is just set up for sick care. And actually, being sick here in Austria, also being sick in the US, in any Western society, if you have the money, is actually a good place to be. If you're sick, you have the greatest help you can imagine. I mean, what doctors can do right now, if you have serious illnesses, is amazing. It blows your mind. Also, again, with the help of technology, but then the whole system will not change itself. I think we as an individual have to take the opportunity to use all this data we can gather and then change our lifestyle ourselves.
I think it's a highly ethical and socio-demographic question of how we can make the advantages and like the advances we have in this technology, in this science, in this data broadly available. As the system in Europe mainly was something that was through like measurements like the universale Krankenversicherung, etc., was made public, and people with lower income could go to a doctor, which was a good thing. But now, as Karl, you said rightly so, it's still called Krankenhaus in German, which means the house of the sick. So it shows a lot what the approach is. But the question is, do you guys think that digital health apps could close this equity gap that healthcare is currently, this gap getting bigger and bigger, not only in the US, but also in the DACH region, as we are seeing in Austria as well? It's getting harder and harder to get a public doctor. Most people have to go to a private doctor because it's, especially when we talk about psychotherapy and stuff, it gets almost impossible to get a public psychotherapy in Austria, although we have such a good healthcare system. So do you think that health apps could change this gap?
I say yes because I'm a positive thinker. But also because when I think about the opportunities those health apps provide us, right? When even I think about, again, living in the US, women with gestational diabetes who live like in very rural areas, right, who may not have access to a doctor, having an app that allows them to communicate them with a doctor, but also having a doctor monitor the app and then providing real-time feedback reduces the chances, for example, that they have like some high glucose curves or like some, again, it will improve the communication. Again, like the people need to be aware and like conscious about it, but if people are open, and I think like that's then an asset, or like that's up to the company to make sure that the people are using the app properly. But nevertheless, again, think of just one example where people would have access to better healthcare. Or I also know that there are companies out there that provide the blood pressure monitoring. That's kind of like the people go home with the blood pressure monitor, but the doctor is able to read the blood pressure, or like the nurse practitioner is able to read it every day, so that people do not need to get to the doctor. They do not need like the 1 hour drive back and forth, right? So I feel like that's why I'm a strong believer that those apps will, on the one hand, educate people about their own health, but then also hopefully improve the individuals and then public health, because everyone is aware of it and they have like the doctors that are available just by one message, right? I feel like the quicker the response time, the quicker the easier the access to healthcare is, the better it is for any health system out there.
Yeah, I would think so too, that actually in many times called the lifestyle apps, sometimes lead the way for bigger structural changes actually. And if you think about, for example, Headspace, I mean, when Headspace launched, nobody was talking about meditation, right? And now a couple of years in, so many people talk about meditation, and I think even like doctors recommend meditation, which was not thinkable a couple of years ago, because one lifestyle product actually, or many lifestyle products, and the trend actually made this kind of treatment more trustworthy, more reliable, more usable in the medical context, actually. And so I think the lifestyle apps or also health apps can actually lead the way to big structural changes. And what I wanted to add is actually that in Germany, for example, the system with the DiGAs, the digital apps, the apps that can actually prescribe where the Krankenkasse pays for it. In theory, we don't have to talk about the system in detail, but in theory, I think it's a great idea. And I would actually opt for a European DiGA system, where you can actually have apps prescribed and paid for by the Krankenkasse in whole Europe. Because what is usually the intention of such an app? They reduce friction in some non-digital process, I would say. So actually, if it can help improve relationship, communication, or anything else between patients and doctors, it can create better quality and reduce costs. And that's actually, I think, the major goal for the healthcare system in Austria right now. We have to reduce costs. So yeah, I would definitely say that digital products can lead the way for those changes.
When you were approaching doctors with 100s, what was the response, or how did the interaction go with the doctors when you pitched them your idea?
Actually, most of the doctors. First of all, we have to differentiate between the private and the public, or the doctors that are paid for actually, and the private doctors. So for the public doctors, actually, the major pain point is to reduce administrative burden. So if you can take away any of the administrative burden they have, they can spend more time with the patient, which lead to better results, and they can actually earn more money. But in this case, I would say it's actually a good sense, because if they can spend more time with the patients, have less administrative burden, it should ideally result in better public healthcare. For the private doctors, I think they are also concerned a lot with the administrative burdens they have, because when you have a product where you pay 250 euros for 15 minutes doctor consultation, but you need to have, like, you need to spend, or you should spend 30 minutes analyzing all the data beforehand, then that's really annoying, because they could actually spend 45 minutes with the patients if the data analysis is happening automatically. So I think they're also a lot interested in helping them streamline their processes and reduce the administrative burden.
It actually is a good segue into the next topic, where when we talk about administrative stuff and like how we can optimize it, we end up at artificial intelligence, obviously, with it changing like any industry in the world, anything really that a human can touch. The NVIDIA CEO just recently said anything that moves will be robotic. So yeah, it's obvious that AI is taking a lot of steam ahead. But my question now again, a very political question, is if we have somewhat 4 or 5 American companies building LLM models that are mainly used for almost all the applications now, and we're talking about European healthcare data and healthcare solutions, how should Europe, or how should any health startup from Europe work with AI when all the models are based in private companies in the US? What's your take? What's your opinion on this very hot topic, I would say?
You want to go ahead, Karl?
Yeah, I think I have an idea about it. Actually, our take is that if you want to use LLM models, you must see them as a commodity, kind of. Because our hypothesis is that actually all the LLM models, they will have a certain quality standard at one point, and you as a layer or as a wrapper or as a company using those services, you must be actually set up in a way that you can use them interchangeably. Like you must be able to exchange them all the time. And then you are never actually bound to any single LLM model. And of course, right now, most of the LLM models are still based in the US. Hopefully, Mistral or any other LLM model will catch the gap and will catch up. But still, I think you as a company using those services can, on the one hand, make sure that you are not bound to one single model. And then on the second hand, the second most important point is that you as a user of those LLM models must actually invest a lot of time and resource in guardrailing, improving, fine-tuning, etc. I think anyone could just upload blood results into ChatGPT or Gemini, and you most likely get rather good results 90%. But then maybe the 10% are really problematic. We are all in health space, so actually the 10% must not be problematic at all. You must eliminate the chance of having problematic results. And so I think that's maybe the two ways forward we have about the problem of having only LLM models based in the US.
I agree, but I also feel like that when, as you said, like Karl, if you're able like to interchange between those models, and like you train your model that you're using and design it very consciously, it can really. I also believe it can help like see and like maybe understand groups. When I think about like Hello Inside, right? If you look at like the setup of the company, it can help understand like groups that are not represented within the company, right? When I look at, for example, like Hello Inside, it's like a lot younger professionals who have not gone through perimenopause, right? Yet we still make recommendations for this population group. So obviously we do have like client interviews, making sure that we address them, but then also the LLMs can help us like see nuances that we as humans may not have seen. And so I feel like no matter if it's like a US-based LLM model or hopefully Europeans too, it does unpack and uncover areas that we as a company, based on our demographics, may not have seen. So I feel like it can also be like a multiplier in that sense.
I mean, what you at Hello Inside are doing very well, I think, is getting those insights, getting those data out, and then doing content with a human perspective on it, with expert perspective on it. And I think this is really such that makes your content so valuable with Hello Inside, because it's not only a graph that shows me, okay, your glucose spiked, but it's the relevance and the references that go along with your content. That's very good.
And
I think
it's also because we do have those user interviews, right? We do provide consultations and coachings with our clients, and then quote unquote we read between the lines or even ask like the direct questions of like, okay, what do they need, right? So we are really trying to add this layer of need and human interaction to that to make the content even more relevant, right? Because it's, I don't know, Christina said this and that, right? And it's like a true story, and true stories are always like, they feel more relevant for a lot of people, especially women, when they're going through something.
both cases here, and also with 100 that there is the human perspective inside is such a game changer, because I think even with companies like Whoop and stuff, there is, and this is maybe my subjective point of view, there's always a trust issue. But I think if the human component gets into it, a lot of trust obviously can be solved with empathy. And this actually brought me to the deep water horizon of the digital health era, I want to call it. If you guys remember the 23andMe data leak, where this company where you could test your DNA to see like, okay, that your grandfather was from whatever, Mongolia. And they had this huge data leak, and suddenly the DNA data of thousands of users was in the internet. And I think, although there's so much possibility in healthcare, like especially if an AI would have DNA data to learn to make CRISPR technology available and stuff, but how can we bring security and trust into our businesses in the healthcare sector and in the digital lifestyle sector? How can we build trust in this field?
I would say, like, in that sense, privacy isn't really a hurdle. It's like a hallmark of quality. And if we really want people to like trust us with their data, like especially with the personal health, right? Like even talking about like cycle data, whatever, right? It's really people need to know that it is protected. And at Hello Insight, I would say like we don't necessarily see data protection like as a legal checkbox that needs to happen. Is really part of the product ethics, right? We have like cycle data, we have like body weight, we do again like have the glucose data, sleep and whatever, right? So it's really important that it's like part of the product and it's like part of the product ethics. And if anyone reaches out to us, we always explain them like what happens with the data and like give full control back to the individual. And I feel like that's how trust is built. And then also because quote unquote, we are European or like Austrian based company, people trust, especially people in the DACH area, trust us more than, for example, like a company in the US, right? There's still like this, a lot of like, okay, what's going on in the US and whatever. So like being local also improves this trust aspect. But again, privacy shouldn't be a hurdle. It's like part of the product and quality.
Yeah, I think exactly the same way. So it's not a hurdle, it's not a barrier to work in a data secure way in health. Actually, it's a quality stamp. It also helps you in business, like when we are talking to doctors actually, and we have really precise plan on how to handle the data, on how to handle the blood work of our users, and we can actually provide kind of an extra service even to them, to help them understand the regulatory setup, understand how we handle it, how we store the data, where we store the data, etc., etc., etc. So actually, I think talking openly about it, having a precise plan, sticking to the regulation and the law, and going the extra mile of making sure that there's no data leak. Actually, I think it can be one secret sauce of having success in this space.
Yeah, I think it definitely for any digital health company can be such an asset, such a feature you can sell. If you have I would say a understandable and clear, safe security guideline that anybody, because especially when we are talking about health, we're mainly talking about people who are rather older than younger, that a digital native or a Gen Z person probably understands, okay, I have 5-way encryption services, but my grandma won't understand it. And her generation is in much more need of digital apps and services than the younger generation. So I think there's a big chance, if you communicate in a way that our grandparents understand it, that this data is safe, then you have a big advantage with your brand. And in general, managing transparency and control of data in your company.
I think so too, but there's I think there's a couple of conflicting how do you call it? I don't know, movements or situations there, at least in the Austrian market. So until a couple of months ago, all the blood work was sent by fax. So this was actually the most used method of sending blood data from laboratories to doctors. And actually, there was no other real option or adopted option to send blood work. That at one point, the regulation prevented it from being used anymore. And suddenly blood work could not send properly to doctors because fax was not allowed anymore. But why did this happen actually? Um, I mean, I really don't know the details, but I think a lot of issues out there. I mean, also regulation and the health system itself, and could have invited more players in the market and private players to work on that problem and help solve that problem. But this was not the case. So then we're in a situation where
This is a perfect example. Younger listeners probably won't even know what a fax machine is. And this is our most crucial data is sent via it. So that's mad. I think it gives a good insight or like a good perspective on like how big, old, and unmaneuverable the block of healthcare and medicine and hospitals, probably not only in the DACH region but worldwide, are. If we take the AKH, the biggest hospital in Austria, and you see how it works, and they tried to actually renovate it and make it more streamlined, and they couldn't because it's such a clump of bureaucracy and all the workflows that I think the moonshot is probably the only solution to get fast healthcare results. We saw it during the COVID with the vaccines, that the moonshot companies were the ones who actually did it first and safe. But then again, there's no trust in the moonshot, and I think this is the cycle that has to be that somebody has to break. Maybe as we are going towards the end, at Matternity, we founded Matternity with purpose in mind, and using purpose as a compass for what we do and what we want to do actually, and where we want to go as a company. So going away from healthcare specifically, how do you use purpose in your companies or your teams, and how do you use it in your content?
I would say whenever we create something, the biggest question is does it really, because we are healthcare focused company, right? It's really is this feature or whatever really truly serving the people's health, right? So it's really is it just a fun thing, or does it really help the people along their health journey? And because we as at Hello Inside, we really want to empower women really to understand their health better. There's a lot of angles you can take, right? Even thinking about how you deliver content. You always need to keep the population you're addressing in mind. Thinking about, for example, bigger letter size, right? Because some people may have a harder time reading the content, right? So that's one feature that's not just fun, it's really necessary to really help the audience. So again, I would say the overall question is really, does it help, does it serve the people's health in whatever way, is one of the biggest compass questions right there.
Yeah, I think we have talked a lot about values and purpose when we started Hockeyfy already, so many years ago. And I cannot even remember what was the trigger back then, but early on, I think when we were 5, 6 people, we asked ourselves, why are we actually doing it? What is the purpose? Why are we sitting here till 2 a.m. in the morning? What are we doing here? Are we not just building a job platform? What is the goal? And then pretty early on, we figured out that actually we have a couple of values, but the most important one was we love to have a positive impact on many people's lives. In the job platform, actually, the impact was helping people find a new job. We got the feedback instantly. So many people sent us messages, hey, I got the new job, it's so cool. So that was actually the one thing that drove us most. And then we redid a check if those values actually true every year and every 2 years with the whole team. And we had a lot of new people coming in and some fluctuation. But every year again, most important value, we want to have positive impact on many people's lives. And now with 100, I think we just took the same purpose again, or the same value again, because we figured out that it actually has a perfect match also in health space. Because you can build a really small, nice solution, but if you don't find market adoption, mass market adoption, the impact for single persons might be really big, which is also great, but it does not really fulfill our purpose. So actually, you have to have both. You have to have a product that is mass adopted, that is working at scale, and on the other hand, that you have to create the positive impact on the people's lives, and that is the purpose that guides us today as well.
I think that's actually is so cool that it's you and your two friends doing a business with like this one purpose in mind, and now doing another business with the same thing. And I think it's actually great. It really shows that it's not only a company, but it's your personal purpose or passion that drives you guys. Good segue into my next question. So, what exciting projects, milestones, or challenges are on the horizon?
So Hello Inside is expanding its markets, which is amazing. Hoping to get into like different users in different countries. So that's very exciting. Growing. That's amazing. And then I would say, like, on a smaller scale, for those who are already using Hello Inside, there will always be like the metabolic health AI that's kind of like the engine in the background. It's continuously improving, right? Like, the recommendations we provide are improving based on the more data we get. But then also, Hello Inside also provides educational content. So there are multiple programs, and there are always new programs coming, right? So I feel like that's the bigger thing is really expanding the market, quote unquote. The smaller thing, the thing that people experience that are already using the app, will be an improved AI in the background and new content, for example.
It sounds exciting.
Cool. Wow. Yeah, sounds amazing. Yeah, I think for us, as we are really early stage still, I think we are actually we're working on finding the moonshot product actually in the health space to help improve the relationship between doctors and patients. And we are still really naive, as I mentioned before, and we run into barriers every day, and we run into a lot of we never did it that way, so we cannot do it in that way. But I think that's the challenge. We are not in a hurry. We did not expect to solve it in the next couple of years. So I think it's gonna be many years. Yeah, I think we're all marathon runners. So we have the endurance, I hope, to find the big moonshot product actually to improve health.
I think it's good that you say you're not in a hurry, because I think the failure culture that's been prevalent in startup society since forever is probably not so good in the healthcare sector, because failure can come at the cost of somebody's well-being. So I guess it's better to double check it and make sure you do the right thing.
Although I think you have to differentiate what failure means, because I think many people in Austria here would say failure if you think about a product and then this product's not gonna make it to mass adoption. I would actually not say that this is a failure, this is a learning. So actually it brought you one step closer to finding the product that achieves mass market adoption. So yeah, I think in Austria you have to be really careful with the word failure, because I would rather say it's learning.
Yeah, very good point. Our usually last question for our guests is something we want to give our listeners. So, for both of you, the question: what would be one key and actionable piece of advice you would give a listener on finding their fulfillment in their business or their purpose?
I would probably say like fulfillment doesn't really come from perfection, but really like more from awareness and curiosity. Like observe yourself and learn from your own data, learn from your own quote unquote failure and the experiences, but don't judge them, right? They are a cornerstone that makes you you. And I would say like that's the mindset that really applies to like health, but also life, right? So awareness, curiosity, observing, learning from the data, and not judging is probably my key takeaway.
Yeah, I think I have a really hands-on recommendation related to health, which I gave so many of my friends already. So I really believe that we have a unique opportunity right now to use free technology, paid technology, whatever is out there, to understand your own body and health better. And then you can really decide what to do with it. It's still your choice. You can decide what to do with it. I mean, if you want to lose 10 pounds, do it. If you want to gain 10 pounds, do it. I mean, it's your choice, but then you at least know what happens inside you. And I think we have a unique opportunity that all our parents did not have. So I would really urge people to take it.
I think as a society, we are seeing the effects now, but we are going towards a future where people are so healthy that's would have been unimaginable as like even when our parents were our age. And I'm seeing it especially as somebody who works in brand and marketing. I'm seeing it with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are already probably the most healthy generation. Gen Z now being in their 20s, and our generation as millennials, probably we went to parties and drank alcohol. The Gen Z, the majority is getting up at 6 in the morning, going to a run club, not drinking alcohol. And this is an effect, I think, of everybody individually taking health on a different level of priority than they used to do. So it's very exciting.
My opinion is it would be great if we would be the next generation would be the healthiest generation out there ever. But I always differentiate between physical health and mental health. Right. So I would say regarding mental health, we are probably in the worst state ever. It's probably the sickest generation we have out there. So I think new challenges coming up, and we have to see the whole picture, I would say.
And it's a very good point, Karl. Yeah. Super nice. Well, I could talk forever, but we already had an hour. Maybe we do another as an installment of this get together. I want to thank you very much, Karl. I want to thank you very much, Marie-Luise. I'm gonna link all the links to your companies and to you guys' content. And thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. One thing I would like to add, like if anybody of the listeners has not tested Hello Insight yet, use Luise, Luise 15, and you get like a 15% discount for any purchase you do at Hello Insight. So if you're still on the verge, maybe that helps.
Amazing.
And I can also add one thing. So if you are a doctor listening, feel free to reach out to me actually, because we would really love to build the next moonshot product in the health space with you together to improve your relationship between you and your patients. And yeah, I would be really happy to talk to you. And thanks for having us, Kurt.
I love that.
Amazing guests. Thank you guys very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.